the most haunting and well-known mysteries of our time, the disappearance of 3-year-old Madeleine McCann. On May 3rd, 2007, the McCann's family holiday in the picturesque town of Praia da Luz in Portugal turned into a nightmare. What should have been an ordinary evening, a family dinner after the children were tucked into bed, became a night that would redefine the family's lives and captivate the world's attention. But this is no ordinary missing persons case. It's a story of hope and heartbreak, a desperate search that spanned more than a decade, and of questions that still remain unanswered. What happened to Maddie? Who is responsible for her disappearance? And could this tragedy have been prevented? Start with the basics. Praia da Luz is a small tranquil town resort on Portugal's Algarve coast. Known for its whitewashed villas, cobblestone streets, it's a place that families go to relax, far from the streets of the daily life. For the McCanns, Kate and Jerry and their 3 children, this was a holiday that was a much needed break. They had travelled down to the town with a group of friends, a supposedly tight-knit circle that would be later dubbed the Tapas 7. The Ocean Club resort where they stayed was the perfect setting for a family location. It offered kids clubs, pools and activities designed to give parents and children a balance of time together and apart. For the McCanns, the evening was the opportunity to unwind. The adults in the group would dine at the local tapas restaurant, located about 55 metres from the apartment. That's where the children were asleep. The setup, however, was not without risks. The children were left unattended, with the parents relying on periodic checks to ensure their safety. For many reasons, this decision later would become the focal point of criticism and scrutiny. Was it neglectful? Was it irresponsible? The questions still spark debate today. On the night of May 3rd, this routine turned disastrous. Around 10 p.m, Kate McCann went to check on the children and discovered Maddie was missing. The bedroom window was open, the shutters raised, and her daughter was gone. What followed was chaos. Frantic searches caused the police and the beginning of an internal investigation that turned international and would last for years. The world was captivated. How could a child just vanish without a trace? Was it an abduction? Did she wander off? Could her parents have been involved? These questions drove media coverage, headlines dissecting every detail of the case, but all the answers remained elusive. What makes this case so compelling isn't just the tragedy of the missing child, it's the layers of mystery, controversy and intrigue that surrounded it. It's the missteps in the investigation, the conflicting theories and the global scale of the search. It's the fact that even after thousands of leads and countless hours of police work, no one's closer to the truth. Today, we'll dive into this story, walk through the timeline of events and analyse the investigation's failures, examine the suspects and explore the most possible theories. And finally, I'll share my own thoughts on what I believe happened to McCann. This isn't just a story of disappearance, it's a story of human error, resilience and the search for the truth. Let's begin. To understand the disappearance, we must first examine the timeline of events and the context of the McCann's holiday. This case is built on details. Every small information contributes to a bigger picture. The McCanns arrived in Praia da Luz on April 28, 2007. For Kate and Jerry, both doctors from Leicester in the UK, this was a chance to relax with their 3 children. Maddie, who is nearly 4, and her younger twin siblings. Travelling with them was a group of their friends and their children, a party of 7 adults in total and 8 kids. The group had chosen the Ocean Club resort for its family-friendly atmosphere. The apartments were simple and functional, and the resort offered activities for both adults and children alike. Kate and Jerry were staying in apartment 5A, a ground floor unit located near the pool and restaurant. The layout of the apartment would later become a crucial element of this case. The McCanns and their friends developed a routine during their stay. After spending a day at the pool, exploring the town, they would put their kids to bed around 7:30, and then gather at the resort's tapas restaurant for dinner. From their table, they could see parts of the apartment complex, but not the doors or windows of any specific unit. This arrangement relied on trust, and on the parents taking the correct turns to check on the children every 20 to 30 minutes. To make these checks easier, the sliding glass door at the back of apartment 5A was left unlocked. While the setup might seem shocking today, it was a decision made in the context of a peaceful, family-orientated resort where danger felt distant. On May 3rd, the evening began like any other. The children were put to bed roughly 7:30, with Madeleine in a single bed near the bedroom window and the twins in the cribs nearby. At around 8:30, the adults headed to the restaurant, settling into their usual table. The first check came 35 minutes later at 9:05, when Jerry McCann went to the apartment, entering through the unlocked side door. He found all three children sleeping peacefully. Satisfied, he returned to the table. 25 minutes later, Matthew Oldfield, one of the friends of the McCanns, offered to check on their apartment while checking on his own children. Oldfield didn't enter the bedroom but saw nothing unusual from the doorway. But at 10 p.m, everything changed. Kate left the table for her turn to check. When she entered the bedroom, Maddie was gone. The window was wide open, shutters were raised, and there was no sign of the daughter. Kate ran back to the restaurant in panic, shouting, "They have taken her." What followed was chaos. The McCanns and their friends began searching the apartment and surrounding areas, calling Madeleine's name. Resort staff and other guests joined in, scouring the grounds, nearby streets and the beach. Local police weren't called until 10:14 p.m. However, their response was equally slow and uncoordinated. The next morning, it became clear that Maddie had vanished without a trace. Questions immediately arose. How could this happen in such a short window of time? Was the child abducted, or could she have simply wandered off? And what about the open window? Was it an entry point or a decoy? The timeline on events of May 3rd is critical because it defines the parameters of what could have happened. Within the 90 minutes between Gary's first check and Kate's discovery, something, perhaps several things, occurred that would change the course of the family's life forever. As we continue, we'll explore how these events shaped into the investigation and how decisions made on that night still influence public opinion and even law enforcement efforts today. First few hours are critical. Every moment lost can mean the lead going cold, evidence compromised, or a suspect simply slipping away. In the case of Madeleine McCann, those early hours and the days and weeks that followed were filled with errors and missed opportunities that would haunt the investigation for years to come. The police response began poorly. The McCanns reported her missing at around 10:14, but the local police, the Guardia Nacional Republicana, did not treat the call with the urgency it deserved. Officers arrived late, and when they did, their initial focus was not on securing evidence or treating it as a potential abduction, but rather a routine case of a missing child. One of the most critical missteps was the failure to secure apartment 5A as a crime scene, as Jerry, Kate, their friends, resort staff, and even other guests moved in and out of the apartment, searching for Maddie. Any physical evidence that could have pointed to what happened was trampled or contaminated. Fingerprints, footprints, and fibres, all of these could have provided crucial clues, but were likely destroyed in the chaotic first few hours. Compounding this was a lack of coordinated search effort. While police did conduct basic sweeps at the key locations, such as roads leading out of Praia da Luz or nearby abandoned buildings, these were not thoroughly searched until it was too late. Border control were not alerted promptly and no roadblocks were set up. As the investigation continued, further cracks emerged. By May 4th, the Police Judiciária, Portugal's primary investigative force, took over the case, but their approach was hampered by limited resources and experience. Early efforts were focused on interviewing witnesses and canvassing the area, but key leads such as witnesses who reported suspicious individuals near the McCann's apartment were not followed up on. One of the most infamous elements of this case is the frustrated relationship between the Portuguese and British authorities. From the start, cultural differences, procedural conflicts, and the lack of trust created tension. For example, British police were brought in to assist, but their suggestions were often viewed sceptically by the Portuguese counterparts. Meanwhile, the Portuguese investigators faced enormous pressure from the media and the public, which may have influenced their decisions. By July of 2007, the investigation took a dramatic turn. After months of focusing on the abduction theories, Portuguese police shifted their attention to Kate and Jerry McCann. The move was spurred by findings from the British cadaver dogs, who were alerted to the sense of a human corpse in the McCann's apartment and their rental car. Blood traces were also found, but forensic testing provided inconclusive results. The cadaver dogs alerts sparked widespread speculation. Could the McCanns have been involved in this whole thing? Or were the findings unrelated, as the McCanns maintained? The pivot in the investigation consumed valuable resources and placed the family under intense public scrutiny, but it also failed to produce any definitive answers. Another significant misstep was the release of key information to the media. Witness testimonies, suspect details and police theories were frequently leaked, compromising the investigation. One such leak was the release of descriptions of a man seen carrying a child in the McCann's apartment on the night of May 3rd. While the description prompted widespread attention, it failed to generate any sort of leads. By 2008, the investigation was officially closed due to lack of evidence. For years, the case remained dormant until 2011 when Scotland Yard launched Operation Grange and a renewed effort to solve this mystery. This new team, equipped with advanced forensic technologies and a fresh perspective, revisited old leads and developed new ones. However, even with this renewed effort, the same challenges persisted. Old evidence was unreliable, new evidence was scarce, and the trail had now gone cold. The investigation into Madeline's disappearance serves as a stark reminder of how critical early decisions are in missing person cases. Delayed responses, contaminated crime scenes, and conflicting priorities can have lasting consequences. In Madeleine's case, these consequences have left the family searching for answers and a world captivated by the questions that remain unsolved. Over the years, several suspects have emerged in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. Each has added new layers of intrigue, but none have provided the definitive answers the world desperately seeks. The first significant subject was Robert Murat, a British-Portuguese man living just 100 so yards from the apartment. Robert became a person of interest after a journalist tipped off police, claiming his behaviour was suspicious. He had reportedly been over-eager to assist with the investigation and was seen near the crime scene on the night of the disappearance. Police searched Murat's home and questioned him extensively, but his alibi held up under scrutiny. He was later cleared of any involvement, but his inclusion in the case marked the beginning of a long list of suspects that would come under spotlight. Another major development came in 2013 when Scotland Yard released computer-generated e-fit sketches of two men supposedly seen near the resort on the night of the disappearance. These sketches were based on witness reports that led to significant media attention and a surge in public interest. However, despite numerous tips, the leads generated by these sketches ultimately, as everything else, went cold. Perhaps the most compelling suspect to date was that of Christian Bruckner, a German convicted sex offender. In 2020, German authorities named Bruckner a key suspect, citing phone records that placed him near Praia da Luz on the night Maddie vanished. Bruckner's criminal history includes offences against children, and he was living in the Algarve at the time. While these connections make Bruckner a strong suspect, the evidence against him remains incredibly circumstantial. No physical evidence had ever been found linking him to Madeleine, and he was never charged. Other leads have involved potential sightings of Maddie in various countries, reports of suspicious individuals near the resort, and theories involving human trafficking. Each of the leads had been investigated, but none had provided the breakthrough the investigators hoped for. The suspects and leads in this case paint a picture of a complex and manufactured investigation. Each theory has its merits, but without concrete evidence, the truth remains out of reach. As we move forward, we'll explore potential causes, theories, and implications. The theories is that Madeleine McCann was simply abducted by a stranger, possibly with the intent of trafficking her or for other nefarious purposes. This theory gained traction in the early investigation due to witness reports and the apparent ease with which someone could have entered the apartment. The strongest argument for abduction comes from multiple sightings of suspicious individuals near the McCann's apartment on the night of May 3rd, 2007. These sightings form the foundation of this theory. Jane Tanner, one of the Tabas 7, reported seeing a man carrying a small child near the McCann's apartment approximately 9:15. She described the man as wearing light coloured trousers and a dark jacket, so the child was barefoot, dressed in light pyjamas. This description closely matched what Maddie was wearing the night she disappeared. Tanner's sighting is significant because it places a potential abductor near the apartment during the critical window of time when Maddie is believed to have been taken. However, there are challenges to this account. For instance, other witnesses in the area include Jerry and another resort guest do not recall seeing the man matching this description. Later investigations suggested Tanner may have seen another resort guest carrying their child, a conclusion that seemingly undermined her testimony. Still, the possibility of an abduction remains open, particularly given other reports of suspicious individuals in the area. Holidaymakers from Ireland reported seeing a man carrying a child through the streets of Praia da Luz around 10 p.m, near the time Kate discovered Maddie missing. Unlike Tanner's sighting, this report came from an independent source, adding credibility to the possibility of the abduction. The Smiths described the man being in his 30s to 40s with dark hair and looking uncomfortable as he carried the child. The child to be was around Maddie's age, blonde hair and light clothing. The description of the man was walking. He suggested he was heading towards the beach or away from the main roads, potentially to avoid detection. Critics of this sighting argue that the man could have been a parent carrying his own child back to their apartment. However, the discomfort noticed by the witness and the timing of the sighting added weight to this abduction theory. One of the darker facets of the abduction theory is the possibility that Maddie was targeted for human trafficking. The Algarve region of Portugal has at times been linked to trafficking networks, and Maddie's appearance, blonde hair, fair skin, could have made her a desirable target in certain markets. Interpol and other international agencies have documented cases of children being abducted from tourist hotspots and trafficked across borders. Some believe Maddie may have been taken by an organised group with the means to smuggle her out of the country quickly. This theory aligns with the lack of forensic evidence at the scene, as professional traffickers often operate with precision to avoid leaving traces. While chilling, this theory remains speculative due to the absence of direct evidence linking Maddie's disappearance to trafficking networks. Searches of ports, airports and border crossings yielded no clues, but critics argue these efforts came too late to be effective. Without its own challenges. First, the logistics of entering and leaving the apartment unnoticed raise questions. How can someone abduct Maddie without making the two twins awake or drawing attention from the nearby apartments? Additionally, the lack of evidence, no footprints, fingerprints or DNA from an unknown individual all cast doubt on the theory. However, as previously mentioned, the contamination of the crime scene may have destroyed crucial evidence, leaving investigators with such little to work on. The abduction theory remains one of the most plausible explanations for Maddie's disappearance. It aligns with witness reports, the open windows and shutters in the apartment, and the global problem with child trafficking. However, its lack of concrete evidence leaves it open to skepticism. While compelling, this theory ultimately raises more questions as it does answers. The second theory, and perhaps the most controversial, is that the McCanns themselves were involved in the disappearance, either directly or through a cover-up of an accidental death. This theory has persisted due to a combination of circumstantial evidence, inconsistencies in their theories, their accounts, and then the behaviour of the McCanns themselves in the aftermath. One of the most significant pieces of evidence fueling this theory is the work of British cadaver dogs brought in by the investigators. These dogs alerted to the scent of a human corpse in multiple locations, including McCann's apartment and their rental car. This was hired only weeks after Maddie's disappearance. The dogs' findings suggested the presence of blood and cadaver scent in the living room near the couch and in the trunk of the rental car. While intriguing, these alerts were never corroborated by forensic evidence. DNA samples collected from the sites yielded inconclusive results with no definitive link to Madeleine. Critics of the cadaver dog evidence argue that the alerts could be false positives or related to unrelated incidents. However, for many, the findings remain a troubling element in these cases. Another element that has drawn suspicion is the perceived inconsistencies of the McCann's statements. Early on, discrepancies arose regarding details such as whether the bedroom window was open when Kate first checked on the children or not. Some investigators and members of the public interpreted these inconsistencies as a sign of deception. Others argue they are just a natural result of stress and trauma, as memories can become unreliable under such conditions. The McCann's behaviour in the aftermath of Madeleine's disappearance has also been scrutinised. Some observers felt their public appearances, including interviews and press conferences, lacked the emotional responses one might expect from grieving parents. However, it is important to note that grief and shock manifest differently for everyone. While some may break down, others may adopt a more stoic demeanour, especially when under public scrutiny. Proponents of the cover-up theory suggest that Madeleine may have died accidentally in the apartment, possibly due to a fall or medical emergency. Fearing the consequences, both legally and socially, the McCanns decided to conceal the truth. Another version of this theory posits that sedatives were used to help the children sleep while the parents dined. If an overdose occurred, it could explain the cadaver scent and the lack of any signs of a struggle or intrusion in the apartment. While the parental involvement theory has its supporters, it also faces significant challenges. First, there is no direct evidence linking the McCanns to the disappearance. All allegations are based on circumstantial evidence and speculation. Second, the McCanns have consistently denied any involvement and been cleared of suspects by Portuguese authorities. Additionally, the behaviour, while unusual to some, is not proof of guilt. The theory of parental involvement remains controversial. It raises difficult questions about negligence and the limit of forensic evidence. While some aspects are compelling, the absence of definitive proof leaves the theory in the realm of speculation. When it comes to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, there is one aspect that's always stood out to me: the role of her parents, Kate and Jerry McCann. While the narrative surrounding them has often painted them as victims, and understandably so, I believe they bear significant responsibility for what happened that night. Let me explain. First and foremost, their decision to leave 3 small children, including a 3-year-old and 2-year-old twins, alone in an unfamiliar apartment in a foreign country was at best deeply irresponsible. As parents, our primary duty is to protect our children, and their choice to prioritise a social dinner over their children's safety is, in my view, indefensible. Some might argue they checked on their children every 20 to 30 minutes, but let's be realistic. In that span of time, anything could have happened, and it did. The McCanns created the conditions that allowed for Madeleine's disappearance. Secondly, I can't shake the lingering questions around Kate McCann. The cadaver dogs alert to the scent of a human corpse in the apartment and the rental car raised eyebrows for a reason. While there's no direct evidence to support her involvement, there are too many unanswered questions about her actions and demeanour during the investigation for me to not be suspicious. We also can't ignore the social dynamics at play. As respected doctors and pillars of their community, the McCanns enjoyed a level of privilege that shaped how they were perceived. From the beginning, they were seen as victims, not potential suspects. Would the same leniency have been extended to parents from different backgrounds? Poorest backgrounds? I doubt it. The privilege, however, doesn't absolve them from a responsibility. Whether they were directly involved in the disappearance or not, their actions, or in this case inactions, created the circumstances for this tragedy. It's worth asking, had the McCanns been held to the same level of scrutiny as others, could the investigation have unfolded differently? Would we be closer to the truth today? Ultimately, my theory is this: while Kate and Jerry McCann may not have intentionally harmed Madeleine, the decisions played a pivotal role in what happened. As much as they are victims of a tragedy, they are also, in part, the architects of it. This might be a hard conclusion for some people, but when we strip away emotion and look at the facts, the responsibility rests on the shoulders of the parents. As we reach the end of our exploration into the Madeleine McCann case, it's impossible not to feel the weight of the questions that remained unanswered. The disappearance of this little girl isn't just a mystery, it's a reflection on human vulnerability, the fallibility of systems that we trust, and the enduring power of hope. 15 plus years have since passed since Madeleine has vanished. During that time, her name has become synonymous with unsolved tragedy. Her image, an innocent, bright-eyed and smiling girl, has been etched into the collective memory of people around the world. But for all the awareness this case has brought, the truth of what happened that night remains elusive. This is a story with so many layers: a family torn apart, a global community searching for answers, and the justice system struggling to keep pace with the demands of an interconnected world. One of the enduring questions of this case revolves around parental responsibility. The McCann's decision to leave their children unattended while dining just meters away has been the subject of endless debate. Was it neglect? Yes. By today's standards, many would agree. But it's also important to contextualise the decision that the setting is playing a part. Prior to lose a peaceful, family-orientated resort where danger felt distant and improbable. The consequences of this decision, however, were catastrophic. It's a sobering reminder of how a single moment of just perceived safety can give way to an unimaginable tragedy. This case has changed the way families think about child safety, particularly in vacational settings. Another layer to this story is the role of the media. From the moment Maddie disappeared, her case became a global phenomenon. Headlines screamed for updates, some credible, many not. Speculation about her fate, the behaviour of her parents and potential suspects was often presented as fact, further complicating an already fragile investigation. For the McCanns, the immediate attention was both a blessing and a curse. One hand, it kept Maddie's story alive, ensuring that she was never forgotten, but on the other, it turned the family into public figures, subjecting them to intense scrutiny and at times vilification. The media's role in amplifying the public's focus on the McCanns as a potential subject is a critical point of reflection. While the press played a role in uncovering leads, it also contributed to a narrative of guilt that many believe was premature and unfair. The aspect of the case forces us to consider the ethics of media coverage in high-profile investigations. At what point does raising awareness cross the line into sensationalism? And how do we balance the public's right to know with the need for privacy and due process? The investigation into Madeleine's disappearance is another element that demands retrospective reflection. From the delayed police response to the contamination of the crime scene and the lack of international coordination, the errors in this case are stark and troubling. These failures highlight the challenge of cross-border investigations in a world where crime increasingly transcends national borders. In the years since Madeleine's disappearance, there has been significant efforts to improve international collaboration in missing person cases, but the lessons of Praia da Luz serve as a reminder that these systems are still far from perfect. Through all the speculation, all the theories and all the pain, one constant remains: the enduring hope of finding Madeleine. For her parents, Kate and Jerry, the hope is a driving force, sustaining them throughout the years of uncertainty and anguish. The McCanns have often spoke about their determination to keep their daughter's memory alive. They have channeled their grief into action, establishing the Madeleine Fund to support the search for her and other missing children. Their resilience in the face of relentless scrutiny and heartache is in itself a testament to the strength of the human spirit. But their story is not without complexity. The public perception of the McCanns has been polarised, with some viewing them as victims of unimaginable loss and others questioning their decisions and actions. This dichotomy speaks to why we as a society grapple with the ambiguity and the uncertainty. Beyond the personal tragedy of this story lies its broader impact on law enforcement, international cooperation and public awareness. The disappearance of Madeleine McCann has spurred significant advancements in how missing person cases are handled, particularly in Europe. Programs like Amber Alerts, improvements in forensic technology and the creation of specialised child abduction units are all part of the legacy of cases like Madeleine's. While these measures cannot undo the past, they represent progress towards a future where fewer and fewer families must endure such a heartache. At its core, the McCann case is more than just about one missing child. It's about our collective response to loss, uncertainty and the unknown. This story has captivated millions not only because of its mystery, but because it speaks of something universal: the fragility of life and the unpredictability of fate. We see ourselves in the McCanns, their joy, their mistakes, their grief, and we are reminded of how quickly the world can change. For many, Madeleine represents the countless other children who go missing each and every year, most without half the media attention or even a quarter of the resources that were afforded to her case. Her story has become a symbol, not just of loss, but of the need to keep searching for answers, for justice, for hope. As we close this chapter, the question lingers: will we ever know the truth about what happened to Madeleine McCann? With advances in technology such as DNA testing and AI-driven investigations do offer some hope. Cold cases are being solved decades after they went cold thanks to tools that were unimaginable in 2007. But even if the truth remains out of reach, Madeleine's story serves a purpose. It forces us to confront difficult questions about parenting, responsibility and justice. It reminds us of the importance of vigilance and the fragility of the systems we rely on to protect the most vulnerable. Madeleine McCann, who would be over 20 years old today, her face, once the image of an innocent child, is now a haunting reminder of what has been lost and what we still hope to find. As we leave this story, let us carry forward the lessons it has taught us. Let us all remember the importance of compassion, the values of diligence, and the power of hope. And above all, Let us never stop searching for the truth, for justice, and for the light that was Madeleine McCann.